I greet the media and I greet the people who are watching online and those who are watching on television at this time. What we have facing us is a major Category 5 hurricane that is over the waters of the Caribbean Sea and moving closer and closer to the mainland of Jamaica. It is some distance, over 100 miles to the south of the island at this time, and it is expected, or it has already begun a slight turn toward the northwest. The movement over the past day or so has been westward, moving from southeast of the island to now just southwest of the island. It is moving now to the northwest, which would suggest that it's going to be moving away. It suggests that, but be not fooled, because the projection was that it would turn first to the northwest and then take a turn toward the north, and then a turn toward the northeast. So it's making a turn to kind of beeline toward the western part of Jamaica. It is what was projected. Many persons were wondering, how could you possibly predict that the system was going to make a turn like that? Because obviously it is moving toward the west. All our meteorologists were telling you online that it is actually going to be moving toward the west and continue westward. But the truth is there are a number of steering patterns that force the direction of movement of systems like these. And as the models ingest the data, they would suggest where those patterns will exist, where high pressure centers would be, and where low pressure troughs would be, where frontal systems would be. And all these have some impact on the direction of movement of systems like Hurricane Melissa. So what was expected is that when there was a break from the high pressure area that was north of Jamaica, when there was a slight break, it would take advantage of that break and move toward the north, because the general motion of a hurricane in this area would be not just west, but a bit north of west while it makes its recurvature and continues to the north. So this is what was expected. There is a little break that it is experiencing, and so it's taking advantage of that break to move toward the north. It just so happens that Jamaica is the place where the break is being experienced. And so with that happening, we are now seeing that turn, and for the system to continue to make its way, keeping itself as much in low pressure areas as possible, because it is itself a low pressure system. So we see on our picture here, the center, which we call the eye of the hurricane. Right around it, those areas that are very white are what we call the eye wall of the system. Then there are those inner bands, and then wider outer bands, or spiral bands, or feeder bands as they're referred to. These take the moisture, as you see, from the southern part of the Caribbean, moving it into the system. And so it keeps it generating. And you know, they are very warm waters of the Caribbean Sea that all our tourists always flock Jamaica to experience. Looking at the image here now, we see again a satellite imagery showing the cloud mass and the storm, the hurricane as it is, but these dots actually are showing where lots of lightning storms have been detected. So there's lots of lightning that's occurring within the system, and we see that the central part where the eye is located is one of the main areas where there is a lot of activity, heavy thunderstorms. There is torrential rainfall, but there is so much activity in the clouds that it's producing this kind of lightning. Here we see a forecast of the track of this system. First we see how it has moved so far, moving from east to west over the waters to the south. And then as it makes its turn, which is what we are experiencing at this time, the center of the system has started to make a turn, although it appears that it had moved a little bit past the Negril Point, which is our westernmost point of Jamaica. But as I said, recurving to the northeast, and so moving across the island of Jamaica. It's expected to make impact somewhere in the eastern part of Westmoreland, or extreme west of St. Elizabeth. So near to that border of Westmoreland and St. Elizabeth is where it's expected to make its what we call the landfall. There are some terms that we need to deal with. In this case, we have a landfall. In the case of Beryl of last year, we did not have a landfall because the eye did not cross the coast. But being so close to the coast, with us coming into contact with the eye wall, it was considered a direct hit. So it's a hit, but it's not a landfall. This case is both a hit and a landfall, because that center is actually crossing the coast of Jamaica. So a little bit more education, Minister. So it's moving across the island, and we expect that it will make its exit from the island somewhere in the vicinity of Trelawney, St. Anne, as it moves off the north coast. Now, in that time, of course, we do expect that Jamaica will experience significant impacts of this hurricane. It will be a serious event, because this is what we have captured from the radar that's operating in Jamaica. With the showers, you can see some of the shower bands that are already being experienced over sections of Jamaica. The southern part of the island, as well as in the west, we experience quite a few of those bands, and those have been producing rainfall over sections of the island. We've also begun to experience some of the tropical storm force winds, mainly over southern parts of the country, as the system is to the south. But as it moves closer to us, we'll see more of that kind of weather, more of the rainfall as we move into the bands of rain that are surrounding the system. And as we experience more of the tropical storm force winds that surround it moving toward the north, we are going to experience more of that over the next day or two. By tomorrow morning, that's when we expect that center to be making its way to the east, to the coastline. So this is our forecast track. The center of the system, as a major hurricane, will continue to move toward the coastline, and then by tomorrow morning, we expect that it will be making landfall. The exact point, we can't really tell you for sure, but as I said, most likely eastern Westmoreland, western St. Elizabeth, and then it will continue its way across the island. By late in the day, by evening hours, we are expecting to see that center, still a major hurricane, moving off the coast. Earlier in our previous press briefing, I did indicate that although I told you what the wind speeds would have been expected to be when it makes landfall, but I indicated that it would have been Category 4. On further review, it would be a Category 5 hurricane making landfall in the southwest, and this is according to the current projections. So it will move across, starting as a Category 5, but then reducing in intensity as it moves toward the north coast, and then it would make its exit and head toward the eastern part of Cuba. That's the forecast track. Here we see an image that indicates somewhat where the peak storm surge would occur. With the hurricanes, although you have the flooding that occurs because of the rainfall, we also have flooding that comes in coastal areas that is driven by the wind on the waves of the sea. So the wind actually pushes the water of the sea onto the land, and that is what creates storm surge for those residents who live in coastal areas. Of course, if there is an inlet or a bay, that is usually the areas where the storm surge is most impactful. And so in the areas of Black River, Alligator Pond, I believe, will experience some amount of storm surge. Here you see a closer picture of that area, and you see that it does extend somewhat inland. So we have to be careful about if we are in that general area of St. Elizabeth, where it would be just east of the center of the system as it makes that landfall. So these images show where those storm surges are likely to be most significant. Here now we look at the rainfall forecast for the 4 days going up to the 31st of October. And here we see that mostly central and eastern parishes would be inundated by the heaviest rainfall that would get up to 30 inches. We're talking about 750 millimeters of rainfall. We're not accustomed to measuring that. I'm not even too sure if our rain gauges will fully be able to deal with that kind of capacity before they are renewed. But we, of course, will make every effort to provide the best data after the event as possible. But here we see the heavy rainfall producing significant flooding, and this will be over most of the island. The other areas of the island going toward the western end would actually be receiving more of the rainfall as well. But because the heaviest rainfall that is associated with this hurricane is going to be to the right side of the eye as it makes its way across Jamaica. So we're likely to see more of the flooding on the right side, on the central and eastern parishes, more so than in the extreme west, where we would then be on the left of the center of the system. That is basically the presentation at this time.